Let's record an intro.
Here's the problem I've been having. We're trying to figure out how to raise money for a movie, right?
Yeah.
We're learning, going through a learning process and everything. Mm-hmm. Fade in to the day we walk into a room to talk to somebody about, hey, we need $100,000 to make our movie. And you see me walk in with you. What do you think?
I think is what I think.
There's 1.5 people gonna make this movie.
Well, here's the
they're
thing.
They're not even a whole team.
It happens a lot, right?
They're not even a whole team.
They get a lot of people and like, yeah, same old, same old. But when we come in, it's like, this could be interesting. Let me hear them out. See?
The counter programming?
Yeah.
It's like all those fully equipped people.
Right.
They don't know what they're doing, but these these partially equipped.
I think they're thinking, WTF? Let me find out. Let's see where this is going.
It is funny though. We were talking about this the other day. People do recognize you from years ago.
They see me the first time, it could be just a couple of minutes or a quick little thing. I'll have no idea who they are. I'm like, oh yeah, I remember you. You're Brad.
Yeah, they walk up to you from 20 years ago.
Yeah.
They don't recognize me. We had somebody on our show recently who knew.
Oh yeah.
Who knew both of us, but only remembered you because how can you forget? So yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Does it help or does it hurt? If we're trying to present our best selves, I kind of feel like I should leave you at home.
No. It helps because I'm memorable. I'll let you do the
But do we get the sympathy vote if I bring you? Look, he's hobbling in here.
Yes.
He's hobbling in here. This guy Beckemeyer, he's just
been trying to make a film for 30 years.
And
Look at him.
This guy over here is Brad. That's all he's got. Maybe we should just throw this guy a fucking bone.
See, there's an advantage.
But what I want to do is leave you at home.
What I want is to stay at home. So we're in agreement. I think that's why we work together, because we understand each other.
Okay, everybody, quiet on the set.
Film Reverie plus Cat. Uptake. What is it? 103.
102.
You changed it.
102.
Ah.
And action. Hello, Film Reverie listeners. This is Michael Beckemeyer, and I am always with
The Balding Ewok.
The Balding
Don't even
Ewok.
say my real name.
Yeah. You don't really exist.
I don't exist.
Yeah. If you think you don't exist and other people think you don't exist, I would like to spend just a little bit of time with them to explain how I know for sure you exist.
I think I exist in people's minds.
No, you exist in my realm of misery.
Right.
Like, it's how I know I'm alive.
Yeah.
Because of the suffering involved.
That's how I know I'm alive. Because I'm like, oh, another day.
Another day. Well, today we have our guest is Louise Levison, who wrote this book, and I think this is the 8th edition. I think
eighth edition.
It's the 8th edition of Filmmakers and Financing, business plans for independent filmmakers to help you raise money for your film. So
Yes.
Currently, I should say, in the middle of all this, writing the 9th edition.
the 9th edition. When you
Say her name.
This is Louise Levison. I
Yes.
said her name.
I didn't
You can
hear
make
it.
me say it again.
Okay.
Louise Levison, author of Filmmakers and Financing, who. So let me just real quick. You mentioned that when we spoke by phone earlier. When you write your 9th edition of the book, how much rewriting do you have to do? Do you just update it, or do you have to a page one rewrite?
It depends on the chapter, but generally a lot more now because of changes that have been going on. Mm-hmm. Although I realized at first I kind of panicked because the theaters were closed. And then I realized if somebody hired me to do a business plan today so they could help help them raise money. They might start production next year. The chances are in 2023, maybe sometime towards the end, they'd be ready to go to festivals.
Yeah.
So they're not going to be anywhere near a theater before 2024 or 2025.
Yeah.
So now I feel better.
Yeah. Well, I did.
Tell me I was wrong then. You know.
I did recently read that they think the box office might not rebound until like 2023 anyway. So it's yeah. There's like we're in sort of a weird holding pattern, I guess.
And I got like an early Hanukkah / Christmas, any other holiday you want to celebrate present from PricewaterhouseCoopers that just put out their forecast for 2025.
Oh, really?
Saying that yes, it would just be slightly below what it was in 2019, the North American box office.
Oh, well, you have breaking news info right there.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that makes me feel. I mean, actually, the book tells you how to do the numbers. The book, unlike my business plans, the book doesn't tell you what the numbers will be.
Mm-hmm.
So, but it makes me feel good about business plans too.
Right. Okay.
But so I kind of did that part first. So it's mostly. There's always a lot of changing, and it's funny. I said to a friend of mine today, I said, I was reading something every year. Every time I redo the book, I read something and go, I said that? You know, it's hard to edit until later.
I have that same conversation with Brad every time. He's like, I didn't say that. But Brad's just forgetful.
You know what? At some point,
it's
just mean.
At some point, it's just going to get old. Okay, so
the whole thing is that for filmmakers, they can buy the book, and the book will show them, and online it will show them how to do a business plan. Of course, I'm always available for them to pay me to do it for them. But
right. That's a good.
Why not?
Yeah.
Well, plug it. But the great thing is that right now the stock market is still doesn't know what it's doing. And that works for them because like in 2008, 2009, when the real estate market went down, a lot of people who have real money pulled their money out of the market. And they tended to be really even more interested and involved in investing in independent films because if somebody came and asked them for $10,000 or $20,000 for a share, they go, oh, sure, because they wanted to do something with their money. But and even the New York Times said that was the stock market was making film look like a conservative investment.
Oh, well, that's the first. That's a first.
Yeah.
Okay,
anyway,
great.
But in any case, you have to raise money from people to make your film. That's why you have a business plan. That takes time, and that's why I've been trying to tell people. I have a newsletter, my website moviemoney.com, every month. And I've been trying to tell them every month, whether it's me or you buy the book, and which is a lot cheaper than me, and want to do it yourself, you start now because you have to raise the money. And by the time you raise the money, hopefully when we get into next year, it's going to be more areas for you to produce are going to be open. And insurance is going to get better, hopefully. And you have to make the film. That's going to take you a year and a half, unless it's an animated film, which will take longer. So that's why I said, this when people are projecting what's going to happen, like when I'm doing it now, I am projecting into 2024, 2025, because that's about when people are going to get their films out.
Okay, so before we get too far into it, because I have a million questions, we have a million things we can talk about. No. It's not you. Could you just give everybody like a...
Trying to get the camera to focus.
Yeah. Okay. Well, can you cut back to me? Could you give everybody a rundown of who you are, where you got started, how you why are you the expert, all that stuff? Because
it's an interesting question. And when my mother was still with us, she answered that a lot. She said, I thought you were going to be a teacher. I went, well, I sort of am.
Yeah.
Actually, I started out, I wanted to be a nurse from the time I was a little girl. And so I went to Simmons University, which was Simmons College when I went to it, now Simmons University in Boston in the nursing school. I went almost all the way through. After a year at Mass General Hospital, I decided perhaps it wasn't the right profession for me. So I went to graduate school and got a master's degree in Asian Area Studies, which I'd always been interested in. And I really didn't want to get a PhD and teach in schools. So I looked at what had happened when I was in the nursing program, because I was never science oriented in that way. I was history and English, and all those were my subjects. I realized when I was taking things like statistics, and people had like these mega fraction things they put together that you had to memorize. I realized that if people gave me 6 hours to do the test, I could figure out my own equations. And so when I decided to, and I've been around business a lot. My father made paints for artists. He was the first person, I brag a little, he made the first acrylic paint for artists, liquid that's.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
so I had gone to business meetings with him. I went to my first conference kind of thing. I grew up in Cincinnati, Ohio, but I went with him to Chicago when I was 16 to the annual, art materials trade show. And I got to see how it worked on the convention floor, where people had stands and were trying to sell stuff and things like that. And I guess all of it, and he always talked about business, and somehow all of that just lodged in my brain somewhere. So when I needed it, I pulled it out. So I decided to do business plans.
So, how did you? Okay, I'm sorry.
I did, yeah.
So, how did you? Okay, so I'm a filmmaker,
right?
And I want to make a movie. Got a dream and a finished script.
Yeah.
Yeah. My and I'm just using us as an example. Our default mode is we just kind of want to make the movie, and our business savvy is it's not what we're known for.
I believe, yes, I have found that out.
Yeah. So I would say that's true for a lot of artists. Some people are especially good at marketing or publicity or the business side of things, but most of us get into it because we like making things. So what is it like? Why does a filmmaker? Well, because we're talking about filmmaking. Why does a filmmaker need a business plan? Like, what does it really help that person do to get their film financed? Because it just by having a business plan doesn't mean you're going to get financing. It's not like you can take it to a bank and say, I've got this business plan, like you could if you're going to open a coffee shop or a restaurant.
No, you're not taking it to a bank. You're taking it to an individual. You're taking it to what we call an equity investor.
Right. So an independent.
And you also, I will say, a business plan is a marketing document. You also need a legal agreement before anybody agrees to anything, which an attorney does. But you need to explain something. Some way you have to explain to the investor why it's a good investment. And that has to do with dollars besides what it is. And that's really the purpose of the business plan.
So it is basically the 15, 20 page.
It depends. If it's one film, it's usually 17 to 20 pages of text and then tables, because you have to do a forecast. So you have to go out and you get comparative films, and you run just a lot of what I call easy math. One of the reasons I moved to Florida, I have to say, is that a longtime director client wanted to make a documentary on film financing. And so he was inspired by my book. And also I wanted to get out of LA after all those years. And my parents had retired to Florida, so I was really familiar with it. And he gets upset when I say to people when I'm doing seminars or something like that, well, I'm not good at math anyway. No, don't say that. What I started to say before is what I learned to do was look at what is happening with the object, whatever it is, whether it's paint, whether it's some of the companies I worked with before, whether it's film, what have similar things done, and then I fit it so it really involves adding, subtracting, multiplying and dividing, and fractions. And what I have found, because I also taught an extension for UCLA for 22 years, first live for 11 years, and then online when online came along. And I became convinced that when I graduated from high school, they stopped teaching fractions because people seem to be totally oblivious to. But that's all the math you need, because you have to do comparisons.
Yeah.
And so it more of the work actually, I mean, from my point of view, and probably theirs, is in doing the forecast, which involves figuring out these comparative fractions and then fitting them to your budget, that kind of thing. So that's about 4 tables, but it's a major part of what the cost of doing a business plan is. But the rest of the business plan, the hardest thing about the business plan for filmmakers is that the rest of it the text has to be accurate. And they tend to want to put in inaccurate things.
Yeah, just round it off or get close.
Yeah.
You
mean, hey, bullshit a little bit?
This would be a perfect, I'm planning on having Robert De Niro. Of course, Robert De Niro never heard of you, so,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, so that's what everything you just said sounds like, kind of like gibberish to me. Like the fractions and the project. No. What I'm saying is, like, that's why that's what I'm saying is exactly that. We aren't predisposed to having a business plan or even being business savvy in any way. And so you can't just Google, hey, I need a business plan, and buy a template off of, some.
Well, actually, the book does have a template for doing all the numbers. And about the 4th edition of the book is when things started going online.
Uh-huh.
And then my publisher wanted me to put on, like, an exercise showing how I did every single number in one of the forecasts that's in the book. In the book, I have three stories that I use in a sample business plan.
Uh-huh.
When you go online, you can actually look in how each individual computation is done. So if you really want to do it yourself, you can do it. And my feeling always was that not everybody can pay me. At least I know how to do what they're supposed to be doing.
Yeah. So we, as filmmakers, don't necessarily need a business plan to show. I don't need to hand it off to Brad and say, here's what the movie is going to be. And I don't necessarily need it to show my parents or my rich uncle necessarily. But you're talking about attracting someone who is an investor who might buy in for like $10,000 or $20,000 a piece, who is used to communicating in those ways. Like they'll look at a business plan. Okay.
What they're used to seeing.
Yeah, they're used to saying.
The famous thing, them that has the gold makes the rules.
Right. So we're having to come to them. So that's why we're having to do the business plan.
But the text in the book explains, how the industry works, what your story is, one of the other most important sections that is a chapter I'm working on right now is the target markets. And that's the thing that's taking probably more time for me to redo than the other things, because things change, and it's all about who's going to go see the film, what's out there, that kind of thing, what's happening, because then the genres change.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just thriller and comedy and romance. There's all sorts of things in your story that you can match, you can get real numbers for, or that kind of thing. In fact, because I didn't want one person to be able to copy a lot of text, because I did a horror film and they were going to do a horror film. I use cat stories in my book. And I actually went out, and I can each time I do this, I can find numbers on people who own cats and all that kind of thing. So it's the same kind of thing too.
Yeah,
You have to show what's the
I,
population,
I skipped forward in your book because I'm working through your book now, but I skipped forward a little bit to look at your sample business plan. Yeah, you've got a whole cat trilogy.
Right. Well,
Some
the third
mischievous,
story
yeah.
changed again this year.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have a new cat to introduce too.
So what's changing? I mean, not what's changing, but what has changed, I guess, because in the 90s it was theatrical, and then maybe if you got theatrical distribution, you might make it off to video at some point, 80s and 90s. But nowadays, like really independent filmmakers, like it's almost like if you're not a Marvel film, you're not even thinking about making it into theaters, but you can very easily, not very easily, but you know what I mean. It's like
Yeah.
a lot easier to
You have
self-distribute your own film and get it out onto video
No.
on demand.
No,
No. She's saying no.
self-distribute your own film.
Right.
I've seen people give lectures on that. Filmmakers say, "I self-distribute my own film." Well, what happened? Well, it was 8 years, and I finally,
Right. Well, that's that. Well,
the other
the self-distribution part, I'm not necessarily, but I
Well,
mean, you can. Your whole distribution model can be to do streaming and.
this is the important part. The only way you have numbers to show an investor is the film goes out theatrically originally. Otherwise, there's nothing to tell them.
Yeah.
And that's why PricewaterhouseCoopers is now my favorite company, because you have to project that. What we don't know at this point is whether or not anything is coming back from streaming. It never was before, but now that whole streaming area is crowded. And my feeling is, I'm going to see if I can find out from a few people before the book is published, is that, if the indies like A24 and Neon are doing deals with Hulu, I can't imagine they're not getting money back from Hulu. And if they're getting money back, the filmmaker is. But that won't be something we're going to know by the end of August when I have to hand the book in. So
Right.
but yeah, so you have to, and there still is DVD. There's even still DVD, which is supposed to disappear a long time ago. So I'm still getting numbers from the digital entertainment group on that sort of thing. So that's still all out there. It's the new stuff we don't know about.
Yeah. So, because, there's, I mean, even in the last year, like Marvel, was it Marvel? Somebody, I mean, most of the companies now, like the way Warner Brothers sold, and not sold, but like partnered with HBO so they could have a streaming.
DC partnered with HBO.
Like a streaming element to their theatrical releases, and they just decided not to put movies out. Like how can and there's no report on how much money Warner Brothers paid or how much HBO paid. Like
that's right. Well,
who paid who?
You don't get that. But anything that goes into the regular digital formats and stuff like that, you still do get numbers for.
Mm-hmm.
And right now, we have to use the numbers from 2018 because we don't have any worldwide numbers after the theaters shut down.
It's funny to me that, not funny, I mean it's bizarre to me that what you said at the very beginning is that I don't remember where you said you heard it, but somebody said that like film financing was like a conservative investment.
New York Times front page headline.
Yeah, that's interesting because
it was a conservative investment because the stock market was was doing kind of what it's doing now.
Yeah.
Not, and everybody thinks it's getting better, then it drops and all that kind of stuff.
Well, where does somebody start? I mean, like they could start by coming to you because you're a consultant, and they can pay you to make it for them, which there's a pretty good argument to be made for that. But if somebody wants to go through the process on their own or wants to start developing something, where do we start? Like, what do we need first?
You need a good synopsis, which is the whole story from beginning to end, including the ending, because we're showing this to investors. We're not publishing it.
Right.
And you need a total budget number for me. So you have to have a budget. I'm not going to question you how you got the budget, but I hope you had somebody do the budget.
Right.
I can only tell if the budget doesn't make any sense and try and talk you out of it, which I just tried to do with someone who's still not listening to me. Yeah.
Hold on. Was that person the producer / director? Because directors always think they can do it for
No,
whatever
that
money.
person has never made a film before, does not work in the film business.
Yeah.
And I'm saying, get a director, get a producer.
Yeah.
And she did have somebody do a budget, but for a first-time person, she should not be doing a film, even if she was experienced in making short films or something. You know?
Yeah.
So,
Well, that's the we had. I think you know Scott DuPont, right? He was on a couple weeks ago, and his theory is make $1,000 film, then a $10,000 film, then then work your way up, and then like you can't just jump into a $2 million thing. Never having done it before, it's going to be a disaster. It could be a disaster.
well, I mean, let's say that you're the writer. You can be a producer and not actually be hands-on having made a film, but you want a good director.
Yeah.
You just have to look at the pieces you can put together. But I would hope that people would start with not the budgets as low as they used to be, because I couldn't find for the book for the book I'm using 2016 through 2018 for worldwide numbers, and then 2019 for current, because we can't use the last 2 years.
Yeah.
And I couldn't find anything that made money that was less than $1 million budget. So things have changed a bit.
Well, that's another question, is because we sort of bouncing around, but
Yeah.
you were saying that well, movies are notoriously unprofitable. I don't know how to say it. They're like you they don't normally make money. It's like it's rare that they actually do make money.
It's not that rare.
How do you present the information though to convince to woo an investor in?
I have to do the research on the films. Box Office Mojo has box office.
Yeah.
Hopefully, I found that. I may not know the technical side of it, the internet, but if a budget is out there, I will find it.
Yeah.
And so in order, now normally I can't right now because we don't have anything, but I'm tracking it anyway. Normally I will have something every month also that shows like independent films, but on Box Office Mojo they show it, and sometimes they do have the budget, and if I can tell by looking at the budget and the box office if it has a potential of making a profit. And then I have to buy the rest of the information from the Nielsen company.
Right. So that you can have all the data.
Yeah, because now people don't want to do that. They want to try to pick up free information, which will be wrong, but that's what they do.
So
so there's enough information for me too, but the film has to have been around, gone, and have a little bit of foreign at least to add into it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying people still could make. I mean, in documentaries, you can make a $500,000 budget. And the hardest thing though is to have I have enough documentaries to do a business plan, but it's not like other feature films. You don't have them being that successful every year.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit harder. But there's plenty of films that do make money. And independent films. And there's a lot of films that don't. I mean, I used to have every once in a while, not so much now, I would have clients who would say, well, because when I do a forecast, I do a low, which is break even. The investor gets his money back, but nobody makes a profit. Then I have a moderate, which is what I really think the film will do. And then I have a high, in case it just goes wild or something. So we're really looking at the moderate for the forecast. And a lot of people would say, well, why don't you show the film losing money? I went, this is really what investors like. No. So I have 3.5 pages in the financial section of explanation of how I do the numbers, pointing out to them we don't know all the movies that are out there. We don't know all the movies that lost money and all that kind of stuff.
So
I don't know if this is off topic, but how do you know, like, filmmakers trying to work their way up and trying to, get it? I mean, it's like you got to meet people, and then you have to do everything right and do the budget and all that. Part of the problem is like, sort of a procedure. Like, how do you know? What can you do so that you can know who to trust, or do you just keep, doing it until you.
Hopefully, you can find people that you can work with. For instance, particularly early on, I found this more, but I would see lots of gossip about actors, and people, would have actors in their business plan, that kind of thing. And I would say to the filmmaker, here's the email for, for the, if I couldn't find it, they could, for the person who was the line producer on the film. Call that person, because he'll talk to you rather than talk to me, because I represent corporate, even though I'm not, and that kind of Hollywood corporate. You hopefully, in every town almost, there's a film commission. They give, people come and give lectures at schools. You have to go out and network where you are. And hopefully you're probably better off being wherever you are than in Los Angeles or New York, because there's so many filmmakers there anyway. But most cities, unless they're really small, excuse me, or like here in Florida, the state used to have an incentive they killed down a long time ago to help you make a film. But the film commission in the county where I live does. The film commission, there's 2 film commissions further north that do. I think in Orlando they do, that kind of thing. You just have to try and network, and now you can network online more than you used to be able to, which is actually kind of helps a lot of people during this time, because more people are online to talk to you for free, things that you used to have to pay for before. I was listening to something that IndieWire, the report, I never know what to call it, like the newspaper, but it's online.
The newsletter or something.
And they had somebody from Neon, they had somebody from IFC. So, see what those are. When you see those, see if you can sign up. And as I said, it's for free. Also, at the film festivals that are online now, they're letting people hear their things for free. So it's actually allowing more information to get to more people than, say, just I've been to Sundance 28 times. Well, unless I was at Sundance, I couldn't hear any of the panels. Now people can hear most of the panels for free just by logging on. And that's really a help. And that's what you have to do. And you have to email people and look and see what people have done and see if they'd be a fit for your film, and tell them who you are. And it's in every business, before you had to go to, I would say, the library. Unless you're in a college, you don't know what a library is anymore.
Right, yeah.
You can find out a lot more. And when you want to approach investors, you can find out about their whole life before you ever approach them, which gives you an advantage of knowing how.
Well, but that's one of the problems is, who's an investor? How do you find them to even search their Facebook?
Fortunately, this isn't her problem, though,
right.
Because she's just the marketing material person, and then she hands it off to you, and that's your problem.
She's who you go to when you need the budget and all of that.
The marketing, the business plan.
The business plan.
The presentation of your film, right. and basically in document form.
That we need that so bad. Yeah.
And then you approach people over the internet. You can email almost anyone.
Yeah, that is.
And you have to really understand. You have to be careful and understand that it's about them, not about you. You know.
Yeah. Well, okay, so
if I ask you a question, you have to answer it rather than, I'm sorry, then, keep on talking about yourself.
That's okay. So you have you have your synopsis of your film, like you said, and so what are the things a filmmaker needs? Like, what is if I wanted to even come to you to get a business to get help with a business plan because you're the expert? What do we need to have ready for that process before we get started? So you said synopsis,
the total budget,
the total budget, not just a
and
top sheet budget, but like a total budget.
and before I don't want to see I don't do budgets, and
Yeah.
the only thing is I will if I know you can't make a film, and and this I haven't done this too often. I usually don't refuse people. Actually, I never tell people I won't do it. I become annoying, so they won't want to hire me. But which is hard, of course. But if somebody said, well, you say to me they're going to make a $300,000 film with 12 car chases in it, I'm going, no, you're not. Sometimes I can tell that the budget has no bearing, but I'm not.
Nobody wants to hear your negativity. Nobody wants some Debbie Downer telling me I can't do what I want to do.
That's right. That's me. So, so really, those are two things. And if you have people attached, what we call above the line, producer, director, actors, or even if you've exchanged emails, I need something in writing that says a person is interested. And then I will say exactly what you have. Now, there's formats that attorneys will have, and attorneys I work with, usually you can find those for free online too from attorneys. But that's something that people will put together, that says they're interested. But, if Robert De Niro says, I'm interested in doing your film, then that's what you put in. You don't say he's attached. You say,
right. Oh, yeah.
You say Robert De Niro is interested in doing this part. But I'm saying it has to be accurate. Because the other thing about investors is, and this is not just for filmmakers, but more so sometimes in film, I think, they're very strange. And they get very upset. It takes a long time to raise money for a film, and sometimes you can't. And sometimes people raise development money, and you should have an agreement that a lawyer can put together, because development money is never paid back if the film isn't made. And that's clear when people sign it. But I have found that investors will ignore the fact they know legally they're wrong, but they will sue you anyway. And they have money, and probably you don't. So you don't want to get in that situation, because people, and I sort of wrote this in the book, one of the early lectures I was, somebody told me what they were going to do, and I said, well, the investor will sue you. So they kind of threw up their hands and shrugged their shoulders, which I spent a long time trying how to describe that in the book. And I said, well, this is what's going to happen. They will sue you, and you will be sorry for the rest of your life. You will be penniless.
Well, you go ahead, but I have a question.
Yeah,
after
so
you.
I was going to, something you said on the phone when we spoke a few weeks ago, you said that, what you just said, basically, you said, it is not a legal document, but you can be sued over it.
Right. Anything.
Explain how or why, or what, like you just said, is it as meticulous as saying Robert De Niro is attached, and then you get somebody to invest money in your thing, but then you find out he's not attached?
Right.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So do you have an actual real life story?
Yeah.
Okay.
There's also, that's the most common thing that's done. But everything, the history, how things work, the target market area, everything in that, there has to be, background for it. There has to be something you can show that says, well, yeah, this is what so-and-so said. You quote people, you have to have proofs they said it. There's a wonderful, wonderful quote that I wish I could put in, that one of the producers at Disney said long before the Hollywood Reporter and all those took everything online. And because it was only written, it was written, and I couldn't keep every Hollywood Reporter I ever read. I can't say the person said it because I can't prove it because it's not online. So that's the way it goes.
Okay, so you can't just you can't just go in and BS stuff, and because
Yeah.
I mean it's real tempting well, I mean, promotionally, it was like, it's going to be the biggest thing ever, blah, 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 blah. And here's why. We're going to get De Niro, blah, 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 in our movie. And then somebody gives you money, and then it becomes a problem.
It only as long as he had agreed to do the movie when you gave him the business plan. If he changes his mind, that's not something he can, if he breaks the contract.
Right.
As long as you didn't lie when you wrote the business plan, that's okay. That should be okay. As I said, they can go crazy anyway. But I think depending on what state you're living in, it's very strange. Judges have different ways of approaching it in different states.
I just wanted. I'm assuming, are there resources in your book that show where people can go to get accurate numbers on things to put there?
My website, moviemoney.com, has resources that I try to update all the time. And I say in the book, like the Motion Picture of America, Association of America, they put out a report every year that has a lot of data in it. So you take that data and you use it, and you're okay, because you have that report. They have, they have how many people, the population, how many people in what age groups went to see films, that sort of thing. It's very, very useful. So then I said, Digital Entertainment Group has the data on all the online, the regular online except for streaming, and VOD and all that kind of stuff. They have all that. So that's all free for you. You just have to go look for it, and I show in the book that's the easy stuff essentially for me to update too. So as long as you're saying something that there's a background for.
So what if someone said if someone wanted to know, what do you think is the most important part of the business plan, that is from where you see it? Would you say it's the data, the crunching of the numbers? That
I would say that is generally it's been to me three things: the story, because it's still story,
right,
the target market section, and the financials.
Yeah. Can you talk about because we talked about financials and story a little bit. Can you talk about the target market? Like how specific? How do you decide? How do you present that?
Well, you have the thing about the target markets is you want to show the potential population of people that are going to go see your film.
Yeah.
So you have as I said, you have your overall, what they call, you think of main genres, as that, thriller, horror, comedy, romance, that sort of thing. But in your story, there's all kinds of other things. Maybe it's a sports story, and you can go see, I've done football, I've done baseball, I've done basketball. You can go and see how many people are in different organizations and that kind of thing, and show that in your business plan. You're trying to show who might come the first weekend and then all the other people. So you don't know exactly who's going to go. But one of the things that really, I like to think I helped start it, but probably not. For a long time, one of what I call a subgenre that they never had was female protagonists, and now that's been a big thing. And you can tell from some of the data in the Motion Picture Association's annual theme report, the age groups of people that go. And now, men and women are kind of even, that kind of thing. So you try to find, that's why people were surprised when I did the cat stories. And I said, you can do it for any subject. You just have to have enough in there. So the cats were always doing something. Obviously, the cats wouldn't really do, but that's another story. Yeah. But so it's what is in there that are going to attract people to your film, and amongst those people, there's going to be, and so you not only have the genres and themes, what I call, like auxiliary groups that are related to whatever your story is. But then you have actual numbers of demographics that you're actually putting in after that. So it's going to be something that focuses on the teens to the 25 to 40 age group, or it's going to be focusing on older people who are a big population, like to go to movies a lot.
Yeah.
I hate to classify myself in that group, but I like to go to movies a lot.
You and Brad. Just
Okay.
No, the I guess frustrating, interesting, compelling part of what you're saying is all of that stuff is stuff that filmmakers need to be thinking about from the time they start their project anyway. I don't, it doesn't sit well with me to say, read demographics and then figure out what movie you think you should make next. But having an idea and knowing exactly who you're going to be making it for all the way through from beginning, middle, and end is something you need to know anyway. And the first thing I say is, because people always say, well, why don't I make a horror film? Because, horror films, there's a lot of horror films. Yes, and there's a lot of horror films that don't get picked up or made because there's a lot of horror films. And whatever film you're making, this is not an easy process because you have to put together all these parts. Then you have to make the film. Then you have to work with the distributor, often harder than working with the investor. Sorry, distributors. And, so you're looking at 2, 3, 4, who knows how many years you're going to be involved in this. It better be a story you like. Right.
So if you like horror films, then, but please do not send me another Blair Witch Project film.
Oh, well, we never even mentioned that the Blair
Witch Project.
Yeah. You did if you want to tell a story, I mean, it's a perfect time
I would just started out. And I was living in California, and people connected to people I'm working with now. An attorney, emailed me and said he had these young people that had this script. And what was really strange was horror films had been out, like in literature, in books, and in movies. They kind of hadn't been that popular for some reason. It's hard to imagine now. And then Scream came out. And another film, the name of which I can't remember, so they drew big audiences. And then they sent me this film, and it was a mockumentary, and which looks like a documentary, a true story, but isn't a true story. And
that was even before. That was like Spinal Tap, and there wasn't really there was not before.
I was just going to say that was the last one. That was made 84 or something like that.
Yeah.
This was 1997 or 1994, whatever. Yeah.
Now every other thing is a mockumentary.
This is the one thing, and I say this in the book. There weren't other documentaries I could use, so I used horror films. Low budget horror films as a comparison, and then just kind of gave an example from the earlier mockumentaries.
Yeah.
And so it was the actual, but here's the part I really like. The actual budget was $300,000 that the investor saw, but now on the internet it's down to people kept saying last number I saw was $10,000.
Well, we're in Orlando. We were like we met those guys. Those guys came to film festivals. Like they were from Orlando, and the word then that was that they made the film for $11,000, and we were all of us, Robert Rodriguez, Rebel Without a Crew, and all that stuff was like $11,000, But when I was reading your book and talking to a few other people recently, randomly the budget of Blair Witch Project came up, and it was something like $300,000, and I remember thinking, the hell have I been lied to for 20 years?
Well, they went to Sundance, and it was somehow 35,000. But anyway, they tried not to be associated with me.
Really?
But the thing that saved me was that for putting it out, because I do sign a whatever thing,
non-disclosure, an NDA.
Is that what happened when they went to do post-production, because that was made with, I have to get this right, 8 and 16, and they had to transfer it to 35.
Mm-hmm.
And they did use the Sony transfer, which I think at the time was about $55,000. So that cost them some more money than they had planned on it. So they had to bring in, and this is another problem, why you have to have a real budget. Because if you go out, when you've raised money, you've sold shares in your film. And in order to get to your budget, you have to sell all the shares in your film. And unless you're you could hold some back. Most people don't. So they had to go out and raise more money, which then means they had to go back to the presumably they went back to go back to the investors and get points back from them so they can bring in somebody else to pay for the post-production part they had to pay for. And he gave an interview in 2000 saying how much he had put into the film. So that went away with the $35,000. But the actual thing that does amaze me still is, I just got paid for doing a business plan. I didn't make, people said, why didn't you do it for a piece of that? Well, yeah, but how many films have I done that have done that?
Yeah, you can't make a living doing that.
Yeah. And to this day, investors are impressed that I did the budget for that film because of how much it made. Or not the budget, the business plan.
The business plan,
Hey, they like it, that's fine with me. And I've been doing this so long that, I'm credible, which saves people from getting sued over the data, which is good.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
So,
So it took off. And the thing was that they had made films. It's like one had only made films in Spanish, so at that time it's like, well, he wasn't really a filmmaker. So we had two directors, and when I saw it at Sundance, I immediately said, and I had said in the business plan, they never had a total script because they had people doing improvisation in the film. They hired improvisational actors.
Yeah.
But they had an outline. They knew what was supposed to happen. And that's what I got. And I said at their budget, and a lot of people were making, you could make really good money off of like DVD then. And, I said, if they succeed in doing what they plan, is that making people think this was a real story, is going to be successful. And that's the secret of the film. I still to this day have people asking me if that was a true story.
Isn't that crazy?
I know. Not only that, I've been accused of lying when I say, who are you protecting when I say it's not a true story?
And why? That's crazy, because back then it was everybody was, it was part of the the buzz, the ruse is that it was.
You didn't have all this social media, but people, that's what you want. You want people saying, you have to go see this film.
Yeah.
And then I would run into people who were older who had gone to see the film, who were whatever, 40, 50, 60. I didn't like it, and I would go, well, thank you for your $10. But that's what made the U.S. box office so big. Was that kind of word? Yeah, people say you have to see, and then they would go with friends to see if their friends got scared. Yeah. It's kind of the same thing later on. One of my nephews was big on The Matrix, and he'd go see one of the Matrixes, and then he wanted to go see it with his other friends to see if they liked the special effects or something.
Yeah.
So people would go multiple.
I did that.
Yeah.
I took every friend, every person that hadn't seen it.
That was him. He's still talking about The Matrix.
5 times. Yeah. That's the only movie that I've repeatedly saw in theaters, I think.
Yeah. Well, Okay, so you mentioned it a few minutes ago. You were talking about the documentary. Do you want to talk about it some? Do you want to tell people about it or what it's about?
Well, there's not too much I can say.
Uh-huh.
Except
Yeah.
the nice thing about it was the director is calling it Movie Money Confidential. Thank you very much for naming it after my website.
Yeah.
But right now I'm not involved. I'm an actor in the film.
Right.
I opened the film actually talking about the business plan for Blair project. But because he interviews a lot of investors in it, and it really can work for people who aren't even in film, showing them, how investors think, how different they can be.
Mm-hmm.
They're not like all alike and all looking for the same things, that sort of thing. And he interviewed people who didn't invest, people who didn't invest, that sort of thing. So it's interesting. He even has commercials for a company running like a crazy commercial in there showing.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. So it's so basically there's not too much to say until someone actually signs on the dotted line and is putting it out. I know they have several. They're always in talks, and people say, "Oh, we want it," but they have. The pandemic kind of like was a problem, but still people have to sign something.
Yeah. So we're talking.
That should be out soon. Yeah.
So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. But if you want to let people know where to find you, I don't really even know. I mean, I haven't even finished reading going through your whole book yet. So there's so much that I'm sure I don't even know what to ask you, which I'm sure, you know what I mean?
So we can do another episode.
There is so much that you have, like, experience and, real world experience that I feel like filmmakers, indie people just don't have. So I appreciate it. I know we bounced around a whole lot. It's just because I'm not even really sure.
We're in that process right now. We're trying to get to that part.
Yeah.
And so we're just very inquisitive. Okay, what's our next step?
Yeah.
What do we do?
So,
how do we do this?
One really short anecdote, like.
Yeah. I'll take. Okay. Yeah.
Just because I like to put this in as I said before, one of the things about talking to investors is listening. And when a few years ago, somebody who had a radio show in LA had myself and a well-known director come and be on his show. And when we got there, he suddenly said, "Well, Louise, you're going to be the investor, and he's going to be the director, pitching you something." So he started pitching. He's going through all this stuff. I asked him 6 times what the budget was, and he never answered me. So what I'm saying is the biggest thing you have to do is listen to the investor and see what they need. And if somebody says, if you have a horror film and they say, "I really don't like horror films, I don't want to do it," don't argue with them. Have a nice relationship. Say thank you very much. And if since you like romantic comedies, could I come back with one? Should I make one? They'll say fine.
Okay.
That's I just wanted to throw that.
Right. So it's almost like she knew what my next question was.
Oh,
I normally wrap up with people, and we'll ask them what are like top 3 things that you would tell somebody who's entering into this process. One of them, I guess, the first one is listen to your investor.
Right.
Do you have 2 more?
Well, if it's a relative, still sign an agreement.
Don't. Oh, still.
I was gonna say definitely.
I have had people who've been sued by their relatives for their first because and their film was successful, and hello. So always, I don't care if it's your twin brother, sister, or whoever.
Yes.
Yeah.
But
best friend.
If you mentioned rich uncles before, usually it's been a rich uncle.
Yeah. I wish I.
So that kind of thing, yeah. And also people you're in business with. I've had people who one's been a writer and one's been the producer, director, or whatever it is, who, talked to me on the phone. And I made it sound, the business plan sounds so great that I was going to do. And then he had sent me a check, and then they just had a handshake agreement. And so the writer said, well, no, I want more money now. I want a bigger piece of it now. And they got in a big fight and never made the movie. But he'd already paid me. I learned to do the data first. So you can say, well, I already did, most of it. So, yeah. But that kind of thing. You also have to have an agreement with the people you're working with. I don't care how long you've known them.
Yeah, I just want to add to that I've experienced where, there are people that you trust with your kid and your baby and all of that, but they will forget what was exactly said or misinterpret.
Miscommunicate.
Right.
A miscommunication.
And because you don't have a piece of paper that, look, this is what we did, then it's like one of you has to give up your end because the other, one is more stubborn than the other. So you got to have, it doesn't matter.
What are you talking about?
You know who I'm talking about.
I understand what he's saying.
No. There's an inside joke.
And development money is not a piece of the production money. Development money is like when you get $10,000, $15,000 because you're going to pay me, you're going to pay an attorney, you're going to maybe pay for the rights to something, whatever you're doing, or give an actor some advance money. That money, when in the agreement that the attorney writes, that person will get paid back 2 or 3 times their money they put in out of the production money, but they won't get a share in the actual production. So again, if it's the Blair Witch Project or something, you lose out on that. And then if you want to, if you want to stay friends, you can give them part of your points, that sort of thing.
If you want to stay friends.
Yeah.
All right. Well, tell people where to find you. You mentioned your website, but go ahead and say it again.
Moviemoney.com is the best place. My Louise Levison at earthling.net is on there, so that's how you email me. My phone number's on there. I still have an LA phone number because when otherwise I'm not really in the film business if I don't have a name.
Oh, really? So everybody needs to change their numbers. I'm going to change my number today to the LA. Yeah.
We can spoof it to where it looks like it's from California.
Yeah, we're officially in the movie business. We got an LA number.
Well, when really, it was funny because one of my clients called and said that so and so had called her and said, well, I called Louise's phone because I had both a home phone, and I didn't use the cell phone much. Mm-hmm. But here I'm renting, so I don't want to put in another line in somebody's place. So, and so they called my number and have been disconnected. And they said, I guess she retired. And he said, how long have you known her? Did you go on her website? Did you email her? Oh, no, I never thought of that. Yeah.
Website. Nobody thought to go to the website. So what is your website again? I'm sorry.
Moviemoney.com.
Moviemoney.com. And all your information is on there. And including your book, which you can get on
yes.
But I was going to say
Amazon.
Make my publisher happy.
You want to hold it?
Sure.
Hold it. Yeah, you're the guy. You're going to go change the shot. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's just focusing on your goofy face.
Okay.
All right. Well, that's it for this episode of Film Reverie. If you want to get in contact with me or Brad, I'm Beckemeyer on all the social media.
I'm Balding Ewok everywhere.
And if you want to send us an email, it's filmreverypodcast@gmail.com. We will see you again soon. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
We really appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And
Bye-bye.
Cut.
Film Reverie Podcast is a production of Super Mega Ultra Entertainment and is produced by Michael Beckemeyer and Bradley Kingston. If you're enjoying this podcast, please be sure to leave us a 5-star review in iTunes, and be sure to click like or subscribe wherever you find us. That's it for this time. We'll see you again next week with another episode of Film Reverie.